This is real. For the first time since I've been talking to you, this is really happening. And this is something that has defined everything I've done for the last 3 years. And never have I been more convinced, ever, that we're about to witness some big changes in this country.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Weekly Special for July 17th through July 24th, 2023, while supplies last. And on this one, supplies may not last long. Because this week we feature 2023 American Silver Eagles at just $9.49 over spot, our lowest price on Silver Eagles in more than a year. Since its first release almost 40 years ago, the Silver Eagle has been, without exception, the world's most popular bullion coin, which provides unparalleled recognizability and liquidity. It's 3/9 fine, comes 22 a tube, 500 to a box, and is available at just $9.49 over spot while supplies last. Finally, the Silver Eagle is IRA eligible. And if you'd like to learn more about a precious metals IRA, call us, and we'll be happy to help you in that process. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're always delighted to have this returning guest. Andy Schectman is the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals. He's joining us this Thursday, July 20th, 2023, for a weekly market update. We usually do them on Tuesdays, but you were out of the country, Andy, so thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Good to be here. Good to be healthy. Good to be back. It's just good. Good to be vertical. So thanks for having me down. I look forward to seeing you at Rick Rule's conference here this coming week and in person. Maybe we can do our next one. I think we will in person. And
let's do that. And we can't not talk about the BRICS gold-linked currency that they've pre-announced. It sounds like they maybe had to because the agenda for their upcoming meeting next month got forwarded to 36 countries or something. So it wasn't going to be realistic to keep the lid on the kettle that long. But we've had a number of guests come on our channel and talk to us about that. And there's been a wide variety of viewpoints. Some saying, oh, this is a lot of hot air because there's so many different countries involved and it's not really redeemable in gold, blah, blah, blah. Sounds like we'll find out more. It's a concept at this point, but since you've been alerting us for over a year, almost 2, I think, to the progression of events, 3?
Since 2020, yes.
Progression of events of basically the rise of the East in terms of positioning themselves, at least not to get hurt so bad as they've gotten hurt recently from the West in terms of world reserve currency or trade settlement currency. Can you bring us up to your latest thinking that you've done on that arena and what we need to watch for?
I got a lot to say about it. We talked a little bit about this before, and there's no denying that the people on your channel are some of the most respected people in the industry, people I respect immensely, from Rick to Alistair to all the people that are commenting, including some of the others I watched while I was out of town on your show. I respect everyone's viewpoint. And you're right. I have been talking about this for a long time. I counted over 1,300 videos going back to the end of 2019 where I started talking about this stuff, even talking about, what Nomi Prince is talking about, the leaked first transcript of the subcommittee draft that Nancy Pelosi wrote up talking about a digital currency. And on your show, I said in March of 2020, she just said virus can live on currency. They're going towards a digital currency. All of these little crumbs and pieces that I've put together, I'm very proud of. But you're right. In the end, it's supposition. I took a whole bunch of facts, a whole bunch of clues, a whole bunch of crumbs, and tried to weave them into a linear progression of events, as I called them. But in the end, you're right, it's all supposition. We're guessing what the outcome is, and every one of your guests guessed as to what the outcome is. Even the keynote speaker at Rick's show, Jim Rickards, does he know something that we don't? He might. He did work with the CIA. He is connected. Or is he just assuming, putting the logical pieces together? Occam's razor, maybe. I don't know. That's what I've done. But let's talk about something for a moment, and that is the fact that, look, the United States has done more to destroy itself over the last few years, in my humble opinion, than any of its foes could have ever done. Whether you're talking about, to me, during 2020, the obvious horrific thing was a virus, but to me, the most horrific thing was censorship, cancel culture, or now the obsession with transgenderism, or wealth inequality, or alarmism related to climate change, or the violence and the protests that and the defunding of the police that motivated me to leave Minneapolis almost 3 years ago, or the blatant political corruption that we see in this country, of all places, the land of the free, the home of the brave, where people will trudge miles, hundreds or thousands of miles on foot to find a better life, or raft across a stormy sea to find a better life in this country. And as I said before, liberty and justice for all. But is it really being applied equally? Is justice and liberty really being applied equally? You know, the full faith and credit in the United States government and the backing of the Saudis and OPEC pricing oil in dollars. Well, that's what makes the dollar, right? The full faith and credit. We are broke. We are insolvent. We are almost $200 trillion in debt. We are a banana republic by banana republic measurements. Well, that's not much for the credit. How about the full faith? How many people really have faith in the judicial system right now after watching the dichotomy in the way that the Biden administration is treated versus the Trump family? It's just disgusting. It's more frightening to me than any pandemic ever was. This is not the country that I grew up in, or you, and I don't care what people say. It's not, and things are changing. And when you talk about the full faith and credit behind an insolvent country who is disregarding the equal application of the law, to me, it is alarming. It is not what the world reserve currency stands for, nor is weaponizing of a dollar and sanctioning assets that turn into confiscating assets that turn into giving it to the Ukraine, to a war that we should never be involved in, bankrupting our country, selling all our munitions. I could go on and on and on. Main Street media disinformation, the rising acceptance of socialist ideas, stakeholder capitalism over shareholder capitalism, or ESG, where Larry Fink, the head of the biggest hedge fund in the world, thinks it's okay to call the CEOs of every company that he throws his money at and says, well, if you're not ESG compliant, well, we can't invest in your company, and buyer beware. What I'm getting at is things are changing, not just out there with the BRICS, and those are changing too. But it's very important when some of the guests push back and they say, well, who's going to trust China? Who the hell trusts the U.S. anymore? And that is exactly what distributed ledger technology or blockchain and gold will represent if done properly. And so I think it's very important, first and foremost, to focus there. Now let's talk about your comment about the number of countries joining the BRICS endeavor. Yes, I have gone out on a limb for 3 years and 1,300 videos and said there is going to be a gold-backed BRICS currency because they reclassified the dollar or gold as the only other tier one reserve asset. And is there any coincidence that all the central banks leading up to that event and after that event repatriated all their gold and have gone on a huge buying spree? No, there's not a coincidence. Is there a coincidence that the others, the most sophisticated private investors, are draining the exchanges? No, it's not a coincidence. Any more so than the central banks, the most sophisticated, well-informed investors in the world, literally buying more gold over the last 18 months than at any time in history. Why? Because gold's a tier one. Why? Because evidently, according to Jim Rickards, he has the courage to put a date on it. That's one thing I have never had. I said it's inevitable. The clues are pointing to this direction. If you don't see it, you're not paying attention. They're going to use gold and blockchain to legitimize, to give credibility and honesty to a system that is broke, corrupt, and dishonest as hell. And you know what? They're going to do it, and it's going to make a big dent. Now, where the rubber meets the road is Jim has the courage or the insight or the foresight to note that on August 22nd, when the BRICS countries meet, that they will issue a new gold-backed currency. I believe it. One piece he hasn't talked about, but I've read elsewhere, and I kind of had to do the math, is the concept of a growing union. Now, I want to also pat myself on the back and say, how many times on your show have I mentioned the following? You have the BRICS, okay, but you got the Belt Road Initiative, 150 countries, every OPEC country. I've said that 1,000 times on your show. How about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? I've said that 1,000 times. The largest regional financial military organization in the world. 60% of the Eurasian landmass, 40% of global GDP. Said that 1,000,000 times on your show. How about the Eurasian Economic Union? Said that too. Never put them together, but the reason I talked about them together is because of the massive, massive interconnection. You have half of the countries are in all of the groups together. Look at Saudi Arabia. They've joined the BRICS, the Belt Road, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the New Development Bank. Look at China and Russia. They're, the Eurasian Economic Union for Russia, the BRICS, the Belt Road. All of these countries are all tangled up together. Well, guess what is happening now, according to many people? The plans are to consolidate the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, along with the Eurasian Economic Union. You're talking a super group encapsulating north of 85% of human population. GDP and military might way bigger than ours, way bigger. And when you talk about pushback, well, let me push back a little bit here too. And if this happens, if indeed these groups do unite August 22nd, and I believe they will, because it's important to mention the entire membership of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, including its dialogue partners, its associate members, will be attending the BRICS meeting in August 22nd through the 24th. And the rumor is they are all going to consolidate into one union, and it makes a tremendous amount of sense. When you put all of these countries together, all of them together, you have an incredibly formidable force. You have two of the three largest nuclear arsenals in the world. You got north of 15 to 20% of all the proven gold reserves that are being held above ground, let alone the biggest accumulators and producers of it amongst many of the other commodities, including rare earth metals that are needed for a green agenda, are all made over there. And when you look online right now and Google how many countries have joined BRICS, you keep seeing 41, 41, 41, 41. Count them. What do you get? 25. Well, let's just think about this for a second. Where could those other 16 countries be coming from? Well, let's see what the Shanghai Cooperation Organization has to say about that. China, they're already part of it. India, they're already part of it. You got Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan and Pakistan. Well, Russia's part of it. Pakistan, I can never pronounce it. Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Belarus. One of those has already applied to BRICS. Cambodia, Kuwait, Maldives, Mongolia, Myanmar, Nepal. Saudi Arabia is already in it. Sri Lanka is not in it. That would be 16 or 17. Turkey, Turkmenistan, and Qatar. So somewhere, some of those countries have already applied. Well, that's the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, including its dialogue partners. And then you got the European or the Eurasian Economic Union, which are a lot of the countries I just mentioned. The point of it is they're going to combine. You're talking the majority of human population. And so when you talk about legitimacy, when you talk about the fact that no one's going to trust Russia and China, well, I push back a whole hell of a lot and say we have squandered the good graces of our foreign creditors. We have squandered the reason that many people come to this country, and that is equal application of the law. And I think that is the most frightening thing of everything that we are seeing right now. Just the way that the powers that be, if you're not on the right side if you're not on the right team, well, you're in trouble. And you can see that. And when you talk about the Pledge of Allegiance, which our kids don't say anymore, what was at the end of the Pledge of Allegiance? What am I trying to say? Liberty and justice for all. Well, where's the justice? Where's the liberty? Where is it right now when things that we see can happen the way that they are, when they go after a former sitting president the way that they have and completely ignore what is happening here, watching these House inquiries right now? It just blows my mind, and it's disheartening. So when you talk about the BRICS, do not think that our foes do not see the complete and total amount of dysfunction that we have created inside our country, let alone the weaponizing of the dollar, the sanctioning of countries' monies, the confiscating of the money, and all of the craziness that we're doing, including depleting our military arsenal here for stuff over there that we shouldn't be part of. I don't mean to get all crazy, but I just want people to understand this is real. This has never been so real. And if Jim is right, and he probably is, and even if he's not, you can see that this is happening and it's accelerating and it is coming. And if you are not a contrarian, as Rick Rule says, you're going to be a victim. That I do believe. And only time is going to tell how this plays out, Dunnigan. But in my soul, in my heart, I know that I've been right all along. I do. The one thing that I would never do that Jim did is pick a specific date. And we're going to see. I'm going to be sitting with bated breath for August 22nd, because if he nailed it, well, God bless him and more power to him. But even if he didn't get the date right, even if it's January 1st or next August 22nd, you can see the wheels are in motion. And I don't think there's a lot at this point that can stop this trend in motion from reaching its full potential.
One of the things you mentioned early on there was the gravitation of so many countries of the world, representing so many people of the world and so much of the economies of the world, to try to reduce the harm, reduce the damage that they've been suffering at the hands of the U.S. dollar and its keepers. It reminds me of the quote I think that you've mentioned several times, and that is that in a deflationary depression, the thing you're trying to do not so much as get rich or make money, but to try to lose the least. The one who loses the least wins.
He or she who loses least wins. That's right. Richard Russell always used to say that, and I believe that. Where we're going to, that's true, Dunnigan. I think he or she who loses least wins. I do believe that. And I also believe that the people who have clung to the United States being this wonderful place. I think that they realize now that we're a country that's very dysfunctional and are borrowing money just to pay interest on the debt. We've reached that point of no return. And so whether you're talking financially, politically, spiritually, morally, I mean, go down the list, we're bankrupt in many ways. And I think the bill needs to be paid here pretty soon. So I know everyone's focusing on August 22nd. I am too. But whether or not Jim is right on the date, Jim is right. And so am I. And we will be right. And the question becomes, what type of impact does it ultimately have? But you take one step back and take a look at the road that Saudi Arabia is traveling down and all of the OPEC producing countries. And we are going to reach a point, I believe, in the very near future where things are going to be very different. And just as the concept of logarithmic decay, that's what I wanted to say to you the last time we had a meeting, kind of like Niagara Falls, kind of like, what's his name, who went broke little by little and then all at once. Well, that's what's happening, not only in the way that you look at, as an example, just the way that censorship. I mean, now it's in your face. 2020, when I started talking, it was little by little. Couldn't say certain things. Don't want to get flagged. Don't want to get a strike or kicked off YouTube. And bang, all at once, it's everywhere. Or cancel culture or transgenderism. All of these things, whether you're talking socially or you're talking what's happening to the dollar, as countries little by little divest, little by little they make new relationships, this multipolar world growing little by little, bang, all at once. It's coming, people. It's coming. And I give a lot of props to James Rickards for having the courage to name a date. It'll be fascinating to see if he's right.
That's one of the things a lot of callers and those who are clients, those who are trying to maintain their financial well-being have been asking, and that's what do we do to protect our retirement, for example? And in your quote from Richard Russell about he who loses least wins, it's for a moment it doesn't make any sense. It's like, no, I don't want to lose it all. I just want to pull it over to the side and be out of the storm, and then when the storm has blown over, then proceed, or hopefully even get ahead during that time. And it's what's hard for many people to grasp is that our currency, in which their savings exist primarily, or whether it's in the stock market or the bond market or the real estate market or whatever, even in cash, you're not out of the system. You can't pull over and think, okay, now I've got dry powder, I'm on the sidelines. As long as you stay in the dollar, you're at risk and have been and continue. That's one of the things Rick Rule talks about, is the only guarantee I can make you is that the government's going to take away your purchasing power every year by policy. Any thoughts for people who are looking at protecting themselves and their retirements?
Yeah, I mean, I find it interesting, right? What have all the foreign investors done? They're dumping bonds. What is happening to, in record number, the U.S. public? Where are they putting their money? Two places: bonds. You see all the people rushing out of the regional banks, and rightfully so, but you see even more money rushing out of the commercial bank. Those are people with Eric Sprott and Rick Rule kind of money. The very, very, very affluent people. I'm not saying this is what they're doing. I'm talking people in that strata are saying to themselves, do I really want to keep my money in that supposedly too big to fail bank where JP Morgan, Citi, and Goldman combined have 150 trillion in derivatives? Or do I go to treasurydirect.gov and buy a smattering of a layering of short-term treasuries directly from the Treasury and not buying them direct, or getting out of the way of the systemic risk in the banks? Absolutely. Where do you put your money? I find it very, very interesting that the foreigners are dumping bonds in mass, yet the American public's running into it. How about the stock market? Just two stocks, Microsoft and NVIDIA, or NVIDIA, whatever it's called, these AI stocks, 175 billion in market cap. And that's more than 460 plus of the S&P companies combined. It's more than the value of Nike, Wells Fargo, Walt Disney, Morgan Stanley, Intel, etc. It is so overly leveraged into just a handful of stocks that the rest of them are hardly doing a dang thing. So it's interesting that if you look who's buying these stocks, the institutionals are on the sideline. This is all the American public. So you got the public as bullish as ever in these stocks as the institutionals are on the sidelines. You have the American public jumping hand over fist into treasuries and bonds, and yet the foreign investors are dumping them. It sounds like a perfect storm to me. I also want to mention one other thing. It's become very evident that the Treasury is financing the majority of its deficit and trying to reliquify through the sale of short-term T-bills, as we just mentioned. And much of the mechanism is being used for this is the reverse repo market, where they are using it to fund, kind of almost like a pseudo QE, but they're funding it through the reverse repo market. And so you have the short-term debt being financed literally by the Fed through the overnight reverse repo market. I want to read to you something because the more things change, the more they stay the same. This is from Ludwig von Mises on the manipulation of money and credit. If the practice persists of covering government deficits with the issue of notes, then the day will come, without fail, sooner or later, when the monetary system of those nations pursuing this course will break down completely. The purchasing power of the monetary unit will decline more, and that's what we're seeing, until finally it disappears completely. And that's from Ludwig von Mises, the father of Austrian economics. And that's exactly what we are doing. We are destroying the value of the dollar one way or another through monetization of our debt. And, ask yourself, okay, 32 trillion. We'll just stop spending as much. We'll work our way off. Well, we still have another 150 trillion in unfunded liabilities. How do they get paid? It's through inflation. And that's why I keep coming back to there are one of three choices that we can face. Number one, we can inflate. That's why you have these little things on the coin here, on the ridges, these little ridges. It's because way back in the Roman days, they would cut around the edges on all the coins that they were paying the soldiers with. And you do that enough, you have enough for a whole bunch more coins. Well, we can inflate. They've been doing that forever. We can default. So Richard Russell always said, inflate or die, inflate or default. And there's a third option, find a villain. And maybe, just maybe, the stupidity of everything we're doing inside this country and outside this country has been intended. Maybe that's exactly what they're doing. And that's why I keep coming back to Jared Bernstein. And I just want to read one quick thing from Jared Bernstein. And I know I've said this an awful lot, but who is Jared Bernstein? Jared Bernstein is the lead economic advisor for the United States government, for the Biden administration. And this is what Jared Bernstein has to think about the world reserve status. The privilege of having the world reserve currency is one America can no longer afford. He cites research that evidently reveals that what was once a privilege is now a burden, undermining job growth, pumping up budget and trade deficits, and inflating financial bubbles. To get the American economy on track, the government needs to drop its commitment to maintaining the dollar's reserve currency status. I think that if the dollar were not nearly as prominent as global reserve currency, we'd definitely be better off. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the lead economic advisor for the Biden administration. And I have already talked ad nauseum about Lael Brainerd, whose whole thesis is modern monetary theory and get rid of the banks. What did Janet Yellen tell us is coming? More bank consolidations. What did we just see in Atlanta 2 days ago? Another $250 million giant office building they just walked away from. How are they walking away from hotels in San Francisco, malls in San Francisco, huge office buildings in Atlanta? How are they doing that? Because commercial real estate loans are non-recourse. Bye-bye. Here are the keys. Who holds all those loans? Oh, yeah, the regional banks that Janet said won't be bailed in. Oh, that's right. They also hold 70% of the small business loans, too. Oh, yeah, and there's going to be some bank consolidations. Oh, yeah, and M2's falling off the cliff. M2 is the money supply. How is money made in this country? Created through lending. No one's lending. No one's borrowing. The economy is slowing down. Falling off a cliff. Who's going to face that problem when these leases and loans need to be reset? A couple $100 million worth between now and the end of the year. Oh, yeah, the small businesses. Bye-bye. Here are the keys, out of business. Who's going to face that burden? The regional banks. Are they going to be bailed out? No, said Janet. Not unless they're too systemic. She's going to let them fail. Why? Consolidate the hell out of those banks because it's a whole lot easier to roll out the new CBDC. By the way, Lael Brainerd is in charge of the CBDC and Fed now, which might even come out today. So put it all together, and you see a bigger picture that's coming about. And that is, was this all planned? Maybe not. Maybe I'm crazy for saying so. But you couldn't have a couple of better advisors, and you couldn't have drawn it up better in terms of destabilizing things in this country and abroad to achieve that ultimate goal. And think of logarithmic decay. Logarithmic decay doesn't just explain the end of a currency or economic system. It also talks about a culture and a civilization who all of a sudden is upside down from the country that you and I grew up in, Dunnigan. And I know you believe that without you ever telling me that. I just know it. So the bottom line is simply this. Yeah, this is real. For the first time since I've been talking to you, this is really happening. And if Jim nailed it, well, I wish he would have called me and told me before he made it public, because this is something that has defined everything I've done for the last 3 years, and never have I been more convinced, ever, that we're about to witness some big changes in this country.
One of the big principles that you mentioned there was this playbook of cull and consolidate until you get one to rule them all. And we saw that happen just over the past 3 years. If people recall what happened in the business, many, actually tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of mom and pop businesses shuttered forever across the country. But the too big to fail mega big box retailers and that sort of thing, which were the darlings of the government because they would comply with whatever the plan was of how we're going to manage things, were supported by the government. And yet all the small ones were told you have non-essential staff, or you have non-essential business, or whatever. You have to socially distance in your little tiny store, and you can't. Well, too bad then. You can't keep your doors open. We've also seen that if you want to take a look ahead on the medical front, as far as cull and consolidate, it seems that it's being very concerning to many about the number one leading cause of death right now in the world being a new one that's never been on the books before. So we can't talk about that in detail on this channel, but most people know what we're talking about.
Dunnigan, let me just ask you one question, or just make one comment. What you are doing is what all the commentators are doing, and citing the facts. And I do that too. But the one thing that I really take pleasure in trying to do is solve the puzzle. And the puzzle is you're given a whole bunch of pieces, put it together. Everything that you're saying, everything that I'm saying, it all comes back and points to one picture. And that, what does Occam's razor say? What is the most logical outcome? Why would they do this? Why? Do you know that the 2022 budget just came out, or balance sheet? $5 trillion in assets, $155 trillion in liabilities, right? $5 trillion in assets, of which the biggest asset, according to the 2022 balance sheet, Google it, student debt. All right, so we are broke, we're insolvent, we're 130% of GDP or more. Is it intended? Is it better to find a villain? Option 3, inflate, default, or find a villain. And that villain, those bastards that did it to us, Xi Jinping and Putin and Notebook, how could they do it to us? Forget about the fact that we printed more money in the last 4 years in the history of the country and stepped down interest rates to create ridiculous distortions in asset prices. Forget about that. They did it, and the public will believe it. And here comes your reset, and everyone, just like Klaus Schwab said, if it really did get that bad, if the banks blew up and the dollar was shunned and the interest rates spiked, and maybe it doesn't happen all at once. Maybe it happens over a few months or a year. Who knows? Maybe it happens over a few years. I don't know. But the trend in motion is I believe, already headed our way. And I think that it's real. And I keep coming back. Now, I never felt this way before, right? All these years that I've been talking with you, I didn't really think that I thought this was pushback against the hegemony of the West, the hypocrisy of the West, where we can go into Iraq, blow up their country. Oh, we didn't find the weapons. We're sorry. Well, you know how Iraq feels about that right now? They make trading in dollars illegal right now. And Iraq, who just joined a naval conglomerate with Iran and Saudi Arabia and India and a whole bunch of other countries, that a lot of them didn't like each other, but as we've said before, along with the railway that was just built, brokered by China between Iran and Iraq, or the newfound relationship between Iran and Saudi Arabia. They're all on the same BRICS naval force that just came about. My enemy is and my enemy's enemy is my friend. Things are changing, and people who suffer from recency and normalcy bias, something you and I talk about a lot, I think, are going to be sorely mistaken for not legitimizing just how severe this could be. And maybe they're right. Maybe we're able to pull a rabbit out of our hat. After all, Kristalina Georgieva, the head of the IMF, did say that a central bank digital currency that's not backed by something is just fiat. They also did say, the IMF, that, hey, gold, a barbarous relic, as gold, an international reserve currency, a barbarous relic no more. I mean, that's the IMF talking in a report they issued this last winter. Maybe there is a plan. Maybe there is something they're going to try and do to legitimize, but I don't know, Dunnigan. I think of all of the years that we've been doing this, I come to one fact, and that is either our government is obscenely stupid or they know what they're doing, and they're trying to create a villain and a demolition of this system so that they can blame it on someone else and start over. Because how do you pay nearly $200 trillion in debt right now in this system with interest rates here and probably rising? How do you do it? You don't. And so it's inflate, it's default. Option C, less talked about, find a villain. And I'm going with that. I'm going with option C. And you know what? One last piece, not to belabor the issue. The reason I started feeling that way, and I've said it on your show before, but let me say it again, when they kept beating over our head, every news station and the president, Putin's inflation, I cried BS. Inflation is a monetary political event. It has nothing to do with the war. It had everything to do with creating more money by the Fed and this government in 4 years than in the history of the country preceding it. And add to that crap cake, add the lowest interest rates in human history, suppressed interest rates, which created massive distortions. What you have is a recipe for disaster, and a public that I think will buy it hook, line, and sinker. The majority of them. When you listen to some of these Democrats in these House inquiries, the nonsense that comes out of their mouth makes me wonder, what the hell am I listening to? Has common sense just left? And I think there are a lot of people who are lacking in common sense that will believe this instead of realizing that we have done more to screw up our future in the last 3 years than any Russia or China could have done to us. And I think there's going to be a price to pay.
For people who are trying to be awake to that and are trying to keep their family powder dry and keep ahead of the storm, you often have been able to offer a weekly special to help make it more affordable for people to acquire hard assets that are outside the system, outside the dollar, outside the banks, outside the reach of the inflationary crunch that the government is putting everybody in. What have you got for us this week that we should alert our viewers to?
It's a special that I don't even like. I don't like it yet. And it's the Silver Eagles at $9.50 over, I think. For those people who didn't watch Bix Weir's 3-part series, the interview with the head of the Silver Eagle program at the Mint, you need to. Guy's 75 years old. He's been there for over 30 years. He's really angry at the Mint. Who told him? Want you to make as many Silver Eagles in 2022, the least amount that you can make without pissing off the public and creating a stir. He said the primary distributors came to him and asked for like 36 million coins. They gave him 12. You wonder why the primary distributors jack premiums up, but they have come down, and all of the premiums have come down. And it's really interesting. Then again, when we take a look at the COMEX and the LBMA and the Shanghai Gold Exchange and backdooring out of SLV, silver's disappearing at a wholesale level way up high. And it's going to have reverberating effects down here. But the interesting thing is right now, these are the lowest premiums and the best availability across the board I've seen since 2019. And so to me, whether you're buying Silver Eagles and paying what is still a ridiculous premium, but way lower than it's been, or you wait and hope it goes lower, or you buy something like Maple Leafs or Philharmonics or Krugerrands or Bars or whatever it is that you're buying, honestly, it is the best value I've seen, literally the best value I've seen since 2019. And yet I read Ted Butler this morning, and all he talks about is the massive wholesale shortage on COMEX and the LBMA. And I believe it. The LBMA is down to the lowest level of silver they've had in 140 years. And when you look at COMEX, they have the second lowest registered category ever, with open interest exploding over the last few days. Exploding. What does that mean? Does that mean someone's going to stand for a massive delivery and bankrupt the exchange? I don't know. But we're getting to that point where the ability to suppress the price because of the decreasing availability of wholesale silver and gold bars is becoming a reality. And it's really very interesting. And I can't even wrap my head around it. I try. I can't figure out how is it that's the case, and I believe it is. And yet we're flush, as is every major retailer in the country, with product at the best rates we've seen in over 3 years. It's interesting. Tells me it's one of these things that I like to snap on your show. I don't know why, but bang, just like that. It'll change. And it's happened. How many times since you and I have been working together has that happened, where 1 minute premiums are low, the next minute what just happened, they went through the roof. That's what happens, and that's what's going to happen. Don't know when, don't know what triggers it, but something will. And remember, the banking crisis is not over yet. And I think that's going to be the catalyst that might incite a lot of things, maybe even the rollout of the U.S. Central bank digital currency. Who knows how bad it could be? I don't know. But I'm just simply saying that something's going to happen that's going to change the environment dramatically from what is right now the best value I've seen in almost 4 years to something that is more reminiscent of what we've seen over the last 4 years.
Right, and from a preparedness background, again, the time when you can get the supplies that you need to be prepared is when nobody is interested, and everybody thinks, they look at you like you're Noah building an ark, and they shake their heads and chuckle and go home, and back to their whatever, their man cave and their she shed or whatever, and just seeking the distraction of the day rather than preparing for tomorrow. And that's the time when you need to be preparing. I mean, that's age old wisdom.
Well, and then you think you're outsmarting yourself, or maybe I'm being dumb because no one else sees this. But I'll go back to Rick Rule again. Ask Rick, when did you make the most money? And he'll tell you, when I bought things when no one wanted it. And then he tells a story. He made a huge purchase and the price fell by half. And instead of selling and running away with his tail between his legs, I'm not saying people should do this, but he doubled down, and it made him incredibly wealthy because he stuck to his conviction and the fundamentals. And you have to have strong fingertips in life, and you have to be able to hang on and trust your gut just to see it through. And that's what this will be. This will not be an easy deal. This is the end of a generational, I don't want to say it's the end of the dollar or the end of this country. We are a very resilient country and people, and maybe more so when our backs are to the wall. But it's going to change. Things are going to be different. Maybe the birthright that we all lived under, that we are destined to live better than our parents and our grandparents, maybe that doesn't really play out the way it used to. Maybe we go through some hard times, but the point of it simply is that you're being offered a gift right now. If you believe 10% of what we're talking about here and you don't have all of your metal put away, what are you waiting for? It hasn't been this good of an environment since before you and I started doing podcasts together.
Hopefully, our viewers who are quite astute and are listening, and we've heard so many of them reach out to us and tell us that they watch all of your interviews here and all of our guests. We're so grateful for that. We'll take action, as we all need to at the times in order to be prepared. So, Andy, thanks for joining us on Liberty and Finance, and always look forward to your visits here. And next week, let's see if we can do it live.
Oh, I think we will, and I'm looking forward to it. And, I'm not a doom and gloom type of guy, everyone out there. I'm really a very happy-go-lucky guy, but like I've said before, I've been getting more and more frightened, and maybe it's because for the first time in my career, something that I saw so clearly is happening and accelerating to a level that I never would have thought. I don't know what it is, but I got this very strange, weird, eerie feeling that things are about to start to get very real. And so, as always, Dunnigan, thank you for letting me rant and pontificate, and we'll see this through together like I promised you from the beginning, and look forward to catching up with you in person in a few days and reporting to everyone out there from the goings-on at the Rule Symposium. And by the way, if any of you are in the Boca Raton area this weekend, starting Sunday through Thursday, I'd love to see you at the show. So send an email. Either Dunnigan, I'm sure, has this link on the show page, or info@milesfranklin.com, or Liberty and Finance, whatever your email is, Dunnigan.
Yeah, protonmail.com.
There you go. And we'd love to see you at the show. So it's not too late. So come visit us.
Thank you, Andy, for joining us.
See you, my friend.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.